Whatever Australians might think of the war in Iran, we can't avoid its impact. For one thing, fuel prices have already soared and shortages could develop. But the war in Iran should mean more to us than just any impact at the Bowser, because it's the latest chapter in the long struggle between political Islam and the West that's also playing out here in Australia, as evidenced by the number of mosques and prayer rooms that have held memorial services for the dead Ayatollah. How any Australian worthy of the name would want to mourn the dead dictator is beyond me. His murderous record, his export of terrorism, his subjugation of women, and his implacable desire for nuclear weapons to use on any country that would stand in the way of his global caliphate means we should celebrate his removal, not regret it. And the fact that some in Australia can't see that this should be a wake-up call for all of us just staggers me. Because what's happening in Iran matters as much for the wider world as it does for the long oppressed Iranians. Contemporary Iran is what happens when a country succumbs to political Islam. Prosperity disappears, women are forcibly veiled, and the country's natural strength is exhausted in a series of wars aimed at subjecting first its neighbours and then the wider world to Islamic rule. That's why it's the last thing we need more of in Australia. Continuously since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran's been waging overt and covert war against its neighbours, Iraq and the Gulf states, as much as Israel and America, often using proxies such as Hamas, Hezbollah and the Houthis. The current indiscriminate attacks on every country within its weapons reach, from Cyprus to Azerbaijan and the Gulf states and Saudi Arabia, shows its apocalyptic intent. Hence the importance of ensuring that it never obtained the nuclear weapons needed to deliver death to the infidel on a genocidal scale. The pity is that distaste for Donald Trump, an epic failure to grasp the real nature of political Islam, and the political cowardice of Western politicians with large Islamic constituencies has left Israel and America to do all the heavy lifting. Now, typically, the Albanese government's first reaction to the joint Israeli and American preemptive strikes was Foreign Minister Penny Wong's call for de-escalation.
We do not want to see this escalate into a wider regional conflict. I am concerned that the conflict is spreading so much. At some point, there has to be a return to diplomacy and dialogue.
Likewise, the Green Left British Labor government, refusing permission for American forces to operate out of UK bases, on the basis that destroying Iranian nuclear facilities was a breach of international law.
Mr. Speaker, the United Kingdom was not involved in the initial strikes on Iran by the US and Israel. That decision was deliberate. We believe that the best way forward for the region and for the world is a negotiated settlement.
Even though international law hardly exists to protect rogue nations' preparations to annihilate others. Now, Trump was merely stating the obvious when he observed that the so-called special relationship between the US and the UK was not like it used to be, and then he attacked the hapless Sir Keir Starmer.
Not happy with the UK either. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
He is no Churchill, you can say that again. But our Prime Minister has been little better. Here's the unedifying spectacle of Albanese tying himself in knots to distance Australian personnel on a US submarine from any involvement in the sinking of an Iranian ship.
I can confirm that there were 3 Australian personnel on board that vessel. I can confirm also, though, that no Australian personnel have participated in any offensive action against Iran.
What, like they're somehow submarine tourists? As if being actual combatants in a cause the Prime Minister says he supports would somehow have been shameful. The fact that some Labor branches, ALP political branches, have still condemned the Albanese government, even for no more than nominal support for the attack, shows the sway of the Green Left inside Labor. Not to mention the utter hypocrisy of all the activists who who are against civilian deaths if they result from the Israel just war against Hamas, but not if they result from the mullah's brutal suppression of its own people. Now, the problem for people like Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong is that they entered public life to be activists, not to be politicians that we can trust with national security. Their focus has never been on preserving Australia, but changing it, whether that's changing the Constitution, changing the date of Australia Day, hiding the national flag behind Indigenous ones, or changing the ethnic makeup of our country with almost no regard for social cohesion. As university radicals, both of them, now translated into positions of power and responsibility, Albanese and Wong find it hard to grasp that America might actually be more right than wrong here, and that there might actually be a need for strong military force and even for the use of our armies. The Bondi massacre was a huge domestic alarm bell about the perils of political Islam. And now the war to stop Iranian nuclear weapons is a massive global one. But nothing, it would seem, can shake the leftist complacency of the current Australian government. At least the coalition seems to be waking up with reports today that the coalition will force visitors appealing against their visa cancellations to leave Australia, and with much stricter vetting of visa applicants too from terror hotspots. Now let that be just the start of a much tougher immigration policy for this country.
I said right from day one, we need to shut the door to people who will bring hate and terror to our shores from another place.